Basic Internet Access on FortiGate. In this lab, we will configure Internet access on a fresh FortiGate firewall. As you can see, this is my topology. The main objective of this lab is for PC1 and PC2 to connect to the Internet. Of course, the data will have to pass through the firewall, where we will put some restrictions. To start, select all the devices, right-click, and Start Selected. When the firewall turns blue, click the icon to enable it. This is the first time for the firewall to boot up, so it will take some time. I'll pause the video and come back when it finishes. Okay, now the firewall finished loading. To log in, into the default username, which is admin. For the password, just click enter. It will force you to create a new password. In a real environment, please use a much stronger password. The configuration in this lab will take place in the WebGUI, but to be able to access the WebGUI, some basic configurations must be done from the CLI. To start, access the system interface. And edit port 1. In my case, I'm configuring port 1 because this is the port connected to my modem. Please configure the port connected to yours and set the port mode to static and assign an IP address. This is the IP address you'll use to access the WebGUI, and it must be on the same subnet as your modem. Only this configuration won't be enough. Accessing the WebGUI happens on port 80, but the default behavior of the firewall is to deny every request, so we'll have to also allow that. And don't forget to save your configurations. Now hit your browser, open a new tab, and type the IP address you configured earlier. If you see this login page, your configuration was successful. Type the password you configured earlier and click login. Click begin, and for the host name, type anything. Click OK. This is the FortiGate dashboard. The first thing we will do is change the host name. You could have changed that from the login page, but I wanted to show you how it's done from the dashboard. So under the Systems tab, go to Settings and change the host name to Firewall 1, and don't forget to match the time zone. Click Apply. As you can see, my changes have been saved. Next, we'll configure our ports. So under the Network tab, go to Interfaces and double click port 1. For port 1, I will name it outside as it points to my modem. Click OK to save. Next, I'll edit port 2. I'll name it inside LAN. For the IP address, it will be 172.16.1.254/24. Click OK. As you can see, both ports have been configured. Now it's a good practice to verify everything beforehand. So back to my topology. You have seen that I configured port 2 IP address of the firewall to be on the same subnet as the LAN, as it will act as its default gateway because this is all what we need to mimic a real-world internet access policy. Now enable PC1, go to Control Panel, Network, type the IP address 172.16.1.1, click OK, and apply. Now go to the terminal, and to check your interface configurations in Linux, go with the command ifconfig, and you can see that the IP address has been saved. Now try to ping port 2. It won't work because we did not allow ping in the interface. So now let's go to the dashboard and edit that. Edit port 2, allow ping, and click OK. Back to the topology, PC1. You can see that we started receiving replies. Now let's ping the modem. It also won't work because we did not still configure the policy. It did not work. So back to the dashboard, we will configure our DNS server. So under the same tab, DNS page, specify. For the primary, I'll type my modem IP address. For the secondary, I'll type Google's public DNS server. Click apply. And now let's configure our default gateway. So under the same tab, static routes page, create new. For the static route, it will remain unchanged as all zeros represent unknown routes, which usually point to internet traffic. For the gateway address, it will be my modem. For the interface, it will be port 1. Click OK to save. Now let's head and create the actual policy. Under the policy and objects, go to addresses, create new address. The name of the address will be inside LAN. The IP will be 172.16.1.0/24. The interface will be port 2. I'm creating an address for the LAN because later, if the LAN IP address changes, I don't have to go through each policy and change the IP address. I can just come here and change it once, as this is a referable object. Click OK to save. And now to IP version 4 policy, create new. The name of the policy will be internet access. The incoming interface will be port 2. The outgoing will be port 1. The source will be the address we created earlier inside LAN. The destination will be all. For the services, I just want my users to be able to browse the internet, so allow HTTPS so the users can request web pages safely, and HTTP because not all web servers support HTTPS. And also allow DNS so the users can resolve domain names to IP addresses, and allow ping just for testing purposes. And I'll remove that later. Click close. You don't have to change any of these two settings. Under logging and options, go to all sessions, so it logs when session starts, and click OK to save. Now to test the actual policy, go back to the topology, PC1, ping the modem again, click enter, and you can see you are receiving replies. Now let's try to ping a server that resides on the outside internet, such as google.com, and we started receiving replies. With this ping, we can verify that the internet access policy works fine. Now let's go back to the dashboard and edit the policy. Because we verified the policy is working fine, we'll remove the ping as service and click OK. Back to the topology, PC1, and now we will test from the actual browser, google.com. It worked. And now let's try to search anything. Click. And it loaded the website successfully. This wraps our lab for today. Thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.